it's not like a deal breaker, right? Because there's a couple of other facets to the character, and they are very interesting. But I will say that he's found a little bit wanting when it comes to visuals. He can switch into being a defensive character is what it looks like, and that's very interesting too, because now you have this rush down, but maybe he can flip over and be very good on defense as well.
It's either going to be really good or really bad usually. And that's where I can kind of see Luke falling apart, because I think until he gets to V-Trigger, he looks like a very strong character. How good his V-Triggers are definitely going to dictate how strong he is. And since he's a protagonist character, I have a hunch Capcom's going to make him pretty strong in general.
Yeah. This is them pointing again to this character is made differently in some significant ways than everybody else, and I think we are getting a glimpse of some of the things we are going to see in Street Fighter 6. We got us a new look at a new character. Luke is on his way to Street Fighter 5 and probably Street Fighter 6. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Did you ask how I'm doing? I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know what? And John, I would be even better if our audience does not mind putting a like up on our channel. It actually helps us out a ton if they don't mind doing it. There it is.
Yes,
yeah, but
please like our stuff.
Yeah, Luke is... I'm feeling him. Like, I know some people were not really high on his design. I know that's one of the kind of the big detractions and stuff, but I know like our entire like EventHub staff is interested in playing this guy. Like, that's a big home run to have right from the get-go.
Well, I won't get too far into it because those are two things that I do want to talk about specifically here. But yes, there's a reaction to his, like what we'll say, his visual aesthetic, and there's also a reaction to how he looks like he's gonna fit into Street Fighter 5 and its meta, and it's potentially pretty scary for people that are fighting against them. And I think that's what a lot of people are feeling right now. The EventHubs crew notwithstanding. Really quickly though, before we get into all of this, I want to give a shout outs to one of our faithful followers, watchers, viewers, listeners, Michelle Buffington. Man, I just there's a lot of comments, and a lot of you guys are out there. I'll do this again with other people because you're all awesome. But I see a lot of her comments pretty frequently, and they're just encouraging and nice, and she's got good feedback and such. So thanks a lot for checking out the show. Please continue to do so, and yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, thanks to everyone again who supports the channel. It's like this is our dream job, right? We get to freaking talk about Street Fighter for a living. So it's like it's just nice to have the support, man. We're right up against like Thanksgiving, yeah, and I'm being very thankful. Like it's such a great time. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's jump into this. So we got Luke, we got Capcom giving us the yet another awesome presentation. Is it the fall update, I guess is what it's officially called. Primarily Luke information. We got to see some of his story. We got to see a breakdown of his gameplay, V skills, V triggers, notable moves, special attacks, all that good stuff. A couple of his costumes and whatnot, and then a few things about Capcom Cup that I think we'll get into a little bit later. But okay, I want to start with the aesthetics. Luke has looked sort of bland. Not everybody's a fan of his weird kind of stringy looking hair. And we've got 3 looks at him so far in terms of costumes. His regular MMA attire, his like kind of like street, like what is he wearing, like a basketball jersey, kind of a saggy basketball jersey, and his hair up in a ponytail. And then what I guess I would call the commando or the military outfit, and that's got to be my personal favorite of the bunch. But I do agree with the sentiment that he doesn't look like the most enticing character. And while I would say it's like, that's not the biggest deal, that tends to be a big deal with a lot of people when it comes to this kind of stuff. So it's not like a deal breaker, right? Because there's a couple of other facets to the character, and they are very interesting. But I will say that he's found a little bit wanting when it comes to visuals. But I wanted to ask you what your sort of reaction is. Is it similar to that, or do you love it?
So I'm really biased because everyone knows I'm going to just play Rose, right? So the character's visual appeal doesn't do a lot or not for me. Like I kind of see like the protagonist in these games, and that's something we're going to talk about here with Luke, is that he's another protagonist here, probably fighting right alongside Ryu in Street Fighter 6. They tend to be on the more boring side. And that's something that a lot of people have talked about with protagonists in video games and any kind of thing. It's like your main central character tends to be a little bit more like withdrawn kind of from things, and that's how come I look at Luke and I go, that kind of adds up. It's Alex did not have the greatest of designs either in Street Fighter 3. A lot of people did not like him. Now a lot of people like him now because he's had a chance to really take on, but Ryu is about as generic as it gets. It's karate fighting dude. You can find a bunch of people who look exactly like him from old games. So
Sure. I seem to recall, I don't remember, this was throw hearsay, but it makes a lot of sense to me. You know how Link from Zelda, for instance, one of the most iconic characters ever, I heard that the reason that they've, first of all, especially in the most recent one, I want to say Skyward Sword because but it's not Skyward Sword. It's Breath of the
Breath of the
Wild. I
Wild.
played through it.
Yeah.
I got through all 120 shrines of the original. Don't hate me. It was just a while ago. He looks very like you couldn't necessarily discern a lot of features about him, even down to like gender and such. And then he never speaks, so he doesn't have a voice. And like, but the creators purposefully kept a lot of that away from him so that he could be a blank slate that the player could project themselves onto. Was the point of all of that. Now, what you're saying here about Luke, maybe that's sort of the idea here, but I mean, I don't think so. I do think there's a bunch of detail, right, about Luke.
Hmm.
But like his hair is very distinct. You notice it. He's got a whole bunch of like tattoos and whatnot. There's a lot of nuance. And I will also say this when we're talking about his visual presentation, his animations, some of them are great and very satisfying looking, especially those rapid punches that he does in V Trigger. But like I think it was like his jump in moves looked kind of awkward and wonky to me. It's
Yeah.
like some
Yeah.
things like that weren't the coolest. And but all of the, especially the recent characters, but for a couple of years now, Capcom has been animating their characters in this game very well, especially if you don't do anything and you see their recovery animations. I remember seeing this specifically with like Cody and then like with Dan and pretty much all of the characters from the last couple of years have had it, but they've spent a lot of time. And I think the same is true for Luke. It's just like, did it all kind of come together? I don't know. But it's a relatively, I don't say small, but sort of minor nitpick. Not the greatest visuals, but that's not what everybody's talking about right now. One of the big things they're talking about is how he fits into the game's, or I'm sorry, the franchise's story. Now, it's not official. And as we've said before, it seems as though all but certain that Luke will be the protagonist of Street Fighter 6, and I dare say that he is a Street Fighter 6 character that happened to wind up at the end of Street Fighter 5 because of complications in the schedule with COVID and delays and whatnot for Street Fighter 6. Again, that hasn't been stated by Capcom, but that's what this looks like. And so, and they've been pointing out so much about the story that now we got an extra glimpse of what's going on with Luke and how he's going to fit into things. We were all wondering, who is he talking about when they showed him 3 months ago? And he says, I want to be like that guy. Is he Guile's son? Is he related to Nash? Who the heck is he? Is he tied to some other character that hasn't even been in a Street Fighter game? Well, we got to see his father in a part of his story, and his father is, we don't know, and maybe it's a little bit of a Rise of Skywalker situation here, where it's like the parents are really important, and then later on it's like red herring or whatever. But
John, of all the freaking examples, you had to bring up the new Star Wars like
your
parentage.
favorite,
Yeah.
yeah. Also, I guess spoilers for the new Star Wars, but also I don't care.
No one cares. That's
Yeah,
anyway.
no one's really caring. Sorry. But no, I wanted to ask your reactions to what we've seen in terms of his story stuff. Did anything strike you? And
Yeah.
does anything get you particularly hyped for what he might represent or the role that he might play moving forward?
His dad shows up and yells and stuff like that, and then like gets GG'd or whatever. That's not particularly interesting to me because we've seen that plot line a lot. But what is interesting to me is that Capcom is trying to have some continuity between games. Usually, a new Street Fighter game comes out and it's like, okay, we're gonna like wipe away half of the stuff we talked about before, and it just there's no carryover. But it looks like now finally they're gonna have some carryover between games because they're bringing Luke in to Street Fighter 5, when he was probably a main Street Fighter 6 character initially. Right? In season 5, this was not supposed to ever really happen. A lot of other things. So I'm actually, I a lot of the things we've been asking for, like, hey, care about the plot, do this other kind of stuff. Like, those are the things I'm kind of picking up on. But I get all the complaints about them. But that stuff I am interested in.
hmm One thing that did strike me was that yes, his father doesn't seem to be he's like a nobody, just a whatever character. But Luke mentions, okay, what happens is he's in some kind of catastrophe. We don't know what it is, but his father just takes the reins and tells Luke and everybody else around him to run. And like you said, it looks like he got GG's, probably killed or whatever, and we don't know what that force was. Then Luke ends up going to the military and then has some kind of a connection, runs into Guile. And that's sort of all we know thus far. Of course, more answers are coming when he comes out on the 29th, was it, off the top of my head?
Yeah, 29.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so the 29th, and we'll probably see more on the just slightly before that if his trailer comes out. So, but what they did say was that Luke wants to be like his father. Another thing he mentions in the snippet that we got was that his father has always been simple, quiet, and reserved, and this was a new side of him that he had never seen before. So it's like maybe his father is not what he appeared to be, and maybe he is actually a character that we know about, or that could just be some thematic thing that they want to tie into Luke's general personality or something. But that did raise a little bit of a, well, what's going on there? I did pop up on my radar, so I wanted to point it out.
Yeah, and a big thing for me is like the fighting game community is known to have a bunch of daddy issues. That's kind of like our community in a nutshell. Usually, probably our dad saying, "Hey, you're wasting your time playing fighting games," all that other kind of stuff. That's pretty much what all of us were used to. But that kind of will coincide, I think, with a lot of people. You know, the tattoos, the military background, all that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of people who can relate to a number of issues and stuff with Luke. And so, as you were saying, kind of like taking their own self and putting them into a character. I think
Mhm.
that's Luke is not bad in that regard. Like, that's kind of how I'm seeing him shape up.
Sure, be a sort of a blank slate. Support for the EventHubs podcast is brought to you by MANSCAPED today, which offers precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped has just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. And we have an exclusive offer for you today. If you go to manscaped.com, you will get 20% off and free shipping and handling if you use the checkout code EHubsPod when you check out. 20% off, free shipping and handling, and it lets them know that we sent you. And that's a really important part of the process.
Yeah. Manscaped was actually kind enough to send us both the perfect package 4.0, which includes not only the Lawnmower 4.0, but also the Crop Preserver, which is an anti-chafing ball deodorant, and the Crop Reviver, which is a ball spray toner. Both of these do wonders below the belt, leaving you feeling comfortable and looking confident. We need to look confident, John, and also smell like you care. And you know what, John? I tried this out with a wife last night, and she liked it.
Ooh.
So if you're trying to please the ladies, this worked on my lovely wife.
We know that the FGC doesn't exactly have the best resume, the best track record, the best perception, let's say, when it comes to hygiene. Well, fair enough. Let's start today. We have an opportunity. We can take a high quality product, and I've been using it. I've been using all of these. I deem them high quality. John, are they high quality?
Yo, they're great. They're
Absolutely.
Definitely great.
20% off, free shipping and handling, and we can begin dismantling a stereotype with the Lawnmower 4.0 and its accompanying ball products. One of the things I wanted to point out about the Lawnmower is it has a ceramic blade, which means less snags, less catching, less cuts, stuff like that. And when you're trimming your balls, that's like one of the most important parts about it. It also has a 4000K LED light, so you can see exactly what you're doing no matter how deep and dark you've allowed your pube pores to grow.
That light is amazing. It is so nice to have. I never knew I needed it until I tried this, and now I'm like, I'm never using anything else without that light on there because it's a ball saver. Also, Manscaped's going to take really good care of our audience out there because they can get 20% off.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, hey, it's a good deal. Just use that code EHubsPod at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Again, just punch in that code EHubsPod. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
Balls. All right, so the big thing that is probably the most relevant to the most amount of people is, of course, how he looks as a player or as a character, how he plays. And what we saw yesterday was, I have it here, that he's maybe mid-tier, maybe really high tier. There's a chance, depending on what the particular, frame data numbers and all that comes through. It's like we'll have to see it in practice and see how he actually plays with everybody else. But I suspect that he fits Street Fighter V's meta especially well. He is definitely a rushdown style character. Almost, the majority of his attacks, whether it be normals or specials, move him forward in some way. And we know in Street Fighter's meta in the neutral that attacks that move you forward, think about like Ibuki's heavy kick, or think about Jury or Ed's leaping heavy kicks. A lot of these moves that just eke the character forward, do a little bit of that footsie dance for the character, and that can be incredibly helpful, especially if you're just going around fishing for crush counters, which is one of the things. I don't know if they directly said that that's what he's doing, or if
They pretty
like
much did. Yeah, they pretty much said, "Oh yeah, this guy's going to fish for crush counters in neutral. Like you should fish for crush counters in neutral." I think is what they said. So
yeah, fair
yeah,
enough. So the he's going to be an offensive character for the most part, but what's interesting is that and this actually branches into why he looks like he might be a little taste of Street Fighter 6, is that Capcom are doing some very unique things with him. And Capcom has pointed out, they went and directly pointed out a few ways that Luke is going to be different from everyone else. One of the main things that I think most people are talking about right now are his V triggers, both of which are 2 bars. And while they are still very clearly offensive powerhouse kind of moves, they both sort of allow him to do more in the way of combos and hit you even harder than he would otherwise. They don't function like virtually anybody else's V triggers because they're timers that don't go down just by themselves. In fact, they either stay where they're at or they increase depending on what Luke is doing. So if he activates and you just move away from him and try to wait the timeout, that's not going to work for you. And the whole idea is they don't want people running away from Luke once he has V trigger. They want people still engaging but having to play with him, even though he's in this powered up state, which is interesting. I feel like, man, I would like things to move away from the power of V triggers in this game more than towards them. But we'll see how it all plays out when it actually hits the game. But yeah, he only depletes his V gauge once it's active by using certain, like the particular moves that he gains access to, or by being hit. So it's the incentive is that you want to hit him now that he's in V trigger. You have to fight him. And it'll be interesting how that plays out. But
yeah,
this also means that you have this very offensive character. And one of his V triggers, the one where he gains like the better fireballs, basically sand blasts, pocket sand. That's more of a zoning type kind of a thing, like he can all of a sudden hang back here and now maybe he can do more in the way of goad you into trying to, do a bad jump because he's got fireballs, and he can switch into being a defensive character is what it looks like. And that's very interesting too, because now you have this rush down, rush down, rush down, but maybe he can flip over and be very good on defense as well, and we'll have to see.
yeah,
Um,
and if he's able to back off of people and let his V trigger keep charging up as he's zoning, like he's not a zoning character, but he gets zoning tools in his V trigger, so you might have a pretty deadly character in that scenario. And this goes back to like the Fong argument of you give someone a unique mechanic, it's either going to be really good or really bad usually, and that's where I can kind of see Luke falling apart, because I think like until he gets to V trigger, he looks like a very strong character. How good his V triggers are definitely going to dictate how strong he is, and since he's a protagonist character, I have a hunch Capcom's going to make him pretty strong in
yeah.
general.
Yeah. He also has one of his go-to moves. They said is synonymous with him. Is an attack that actually it's called Flash Knuckle, and you can do different strengths of it. And actually, one of his V triggers empowers this move, but it has a negative edge component to it, as I understand it, where once you release the button, it does more. Like there's a follow-up from releasing the button. And while there's been negative edge in Street Fighter games before, like intentional negative edge, like I think Jury in Street Fighter 4, she had to do the motion, hold the button, and then releasing the button would allow her to do the actual attack. And I suppose the same is true of Balrog's turnaround punch. But they highlight this as a unique thing about him, because most characters don't use the negative edge side of things, and that might be something that we see come back in Street Fighter 6. It's like maybe they're testing things out for that. There was a moment, I think it was Nakayama that said it. He says, executing combos that involve the charged version of Flash Knuckle feels great and inflicts a lot of damage, which is a characteristic that no other character shares. Now, I'm assuming he's not saying that no other character has a move that feels great and inflicts a lot of damage, but I think it's more of just this something. This is them pointing again to this character is made differently in some significant ways than everybody else, and I think we are getting a glimpse of some of the things we are going to see in Street Fighter 6. Maybe not exactly as they'll appear there. It's like probably the early before the beta sort of beta.
Yeah.
But this kind of thing is probably testing ground in the same way that I think like Omega version in Street Fighter 4 was a testing ground for Street Fighter 5 concepts. And this brings me to the other
Yeah.
big thing. Oh, go ahead.
Before we hit on from that, I do think that Luke is probably going to be the most intact character from Street Fighter V to Street Fighter 6. Like, he's the one that's probably going to play the most like it, and it's actually a big thing I was going to bring up again is that if you're going to get into Street Fighter 6 and like Street Fighter 5 has never really kind of done it for you, this is a good character to kind of pick up and go, because he's probably going to be the most similar to what Street Fighter 6 is from a mechanics and kind of gameplay standpoint. And just having to really time your inputs and your cancels and stuff with negative edge and then releases and other stuff, his execution is going to be pretty decent. Like, and I like that when especially you get this late in a game's lifespan, you need characters that really kind of push the envelope with execution. And I don't think he's going to be a Monot level character, because I think that his core stuff is all going to be easy enough to do. But if you want to get that max damage, you want to do those Akira V-Skill 2 combos and whatnot, you're going to have to put some work in. You're going to have to really put some time in it. I like that. I like that really easy to pick up and play, but very difficult to master gameplay. That is what these fighting games should be, pretty much. Shout out to Project L.
Yeah, some big news on that this week too, so definitely check that out. The last thing I want to talk about, though, when it comes to Luke and some of the stuff that we saw this weekend, is his throw parry. This is one of his V skills that is basically, I kind of liken it to a built-in shimmy, in that it is I'm sorry, not necessarily a parry, but a counter, right? Because if you throw and he's doing this little dodge move, and it makes contact, it activates and he does he hits you basically. So, and that's true for regular throws and command throws. Now you go, oh well, that sounds like, if it's a counter or a parry, that sounds like a defensive tool. They specifically said this isn't really something for defense, which tells me it probably isn't a frame one sort of a thing. This is something for when you think your opponent's going to throw, which is very much something that you can think about on offense and base your game plan around. He's got traps for this kind of a thing, and paired with the fact that if you're on wake up, he could go low, he could go high, or he could do this parry thing. And if you wake up with a throw, it's got a lot of the same sort of results as if he were to shimmy you. This is really interesting too, and I gotta wonder, is this something that might be the universal mechanic, if there is one, in Street Fighter 6? But I wanted to get your reactions to the throw parry.
I love it. It's basically I think he's going to be invincible to throws on his startup with it. That's how I would think. But like from like frame 3 or frame 5 onwards, he'll be invincible to throws, and he'll just go through and follow through. And then if you whiff a throw in front of him and like he hits you, like that's a counter hit state, right? And so he can get some big combos and stuff afterwards. That's how I think it's going to work from a frame data perspective. I really like this a lot because it's intent. It's like, hey, I think this is going to go, and then blowing up throws is huge in this game, but especially with a hardcore shimmy based character, which it seems like Luke is, because he's very rush down and very aggressive, and it's like, okay, so you're basically going all in on this kind of thing, and it's like, dude, you do not want to mess with this guy, because with being able to charge up his punches and going into Popeye mode and all that kind of stuff, he's going to have a lot of deceptive frame data situations where it's like, am I plus or am I negative here? And it's in this game especially, it's only -2 if you think it's -2, right? Like it's we know this well. So I'm actually pretty excited about this character overall, even though I know I'm gonna have to put quite a bit of lab time into to blow him up. But that's not a problem. It's like, if he's well designed and thought out, all more power to you. Like I love these kind of characters, especially if it means people drop Cammy to play Luke.
Well, I'm not saying I'm going to play him full time, but I am definitely going to explore him. He does fit the bill of the sort of character that I've been playing in Street Fighter V, that being primarily Nikali and Akira. I have a handful of others, but those have been the ones that have clicked with me the most, and they are mostly footsie neutral kind of characters that want to rush you down. And so that's what Luke looks to be. Again, a lot of this will come down to how useful are all of his tools when they are used in tandem with one another. But I do think he has a chance of being one of, and I mean, maybe the best character in the game. It's too early to tell. But the point is, and I think a lot of other people are excited to explore it. And that is a good look for where we are at right now. Another very good presentation from Capcom. They said as much, and they said more is coming. So I like where we're getting to be right now. This is a good gear to be in, a good way to close out Street Fighter V, for however long that's going to be. And speaking of, there's more on the horizon already with whatever the next Street Fighter project will be, which of course we know Luke will be a big part of. But I think that segues us pretty well into the stuff that you wanted to talk about.